please try to take your seats. Happy to see so many coming back to this room. There's a thing going on between me and Brian, who can actually have the most participants on this session. So I guess, guys, you're the winners. Congrats. I also see that we have some people that still believes the voucher offer is still valid. Sorry to say, it expired before the first break, but stay put. Maybe there will be another offer on the table soon. Good. So this next session will be a panel discussion. We discussed internally. There are many good stories out there, and I think the Vestas story was really inspiring. It was, but we also have 3 companies represented here today, where we believe they have. You've been through some journeys yourself. Some are getting started, some are a few years into it, and Electrolux, for example, you've been onto it for more than 2 decades. So almost. The intention here is a little bit to share the experiences of the journeys that they've been through during the years, and really why they decided to embark on those journeys, and what they see happening in the next few years, basically. Right? Good. So let's get it started, and I'll do a short introduction of the panelists here. Starting on my left, we have Daniel Malmquist, representing NKT. He's been with the company for more than 10 years, and you've been, more or less from the start.
Almost.
Yes. Let's say it for today. We say that. Yeah, good.
From the start.
Originally from, originally from Sweden.
Yes.
Fun fact about you that you are a middle distance runner.
Former middle distance runner.
Details, Daniel.
Put emphasis on that.
Details. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome. In the middle, Dominic Hoben from CorPower. Been with the company for roughly 5 years. You're just getting started on this journey. Originally from Ireland. Fun fact about Dominic. I have no idea what you're doing here, because he actually had a career in Hollywood. So he was a star in the series Game of Thrones. No jokes. I think that deserves a round of applause.
By star, he means extra, but
details again.
Small.
Welcome. And then we have Daniel Salle Wiklund. So I will call you Salle today.
Yes.
As Daniel will be the Daniel. So you are representing Electrolux. You've been with Electrolux for, I will say, more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
Because I think that's enough. Yeah, good. But you've been on to this journey for quite some years.
Correct.
And a fun fact about Salle. So apparently he has a, mid-40, mid-50 year crisis?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, good. So apparently he is taking a motorcycle driver license. That's what's going on.
Correct. Finally.
Also deserves a round of applause. Yeah. I saw some hands waving already, so I guess, motorcycle enthusiasts. Good. Let's get it started. And I would like to start by asking, Dominic, the first question. CorPower as a fairly, young company still. What motivated you to sort of, start to look into, PLM or digital transformation, and really, what was the reason behind and sort of the challenges that you were facing in the organization?
Well, the reason I actually started looking into it was not PLM specific. It was large assembly CAD performance. I have a memory of up 3 o'clock one morning on our former software, doing one click, having to wait 30 minutes, and then another click in order to do a lifting plan for some equipment that we were about to move. So that was the let's say the kick in the ass to want to make a drastic change. And on top of that, we had some quite inefficient processes, namely a release process, change management. Our release process was very manual. We moved things from a PDM system to a temporary location, and the engineers did this, and then that information was then shared with suppliers. So very easy to make mistakes and just adding extra unnecessary steps into the release process. And in terms of change management, we were limited to what we could put on the drawing. So a tiny little box to describe what changes we were making. So having wind chill then allowed us to describe a lot more about the why we made changes, as opposed to, I changed this bolt, and then the next designer has no idea why a certain thing was changed.
Very good. Thanks, sir. So moving on to Daniel, and I mean, you represent a completely different company in a completely different industry. So were there any specific challenges or pain points sort of that drove your organization to, again, adopt these solutions in the first place?
Yeah, there were numerous. So this takes us back to 2015, just before my time then, when we were in a growing position, coming from a quite small company, and we're still growing. I think we were 300 back then, and now we're like 1,500, just on the site in question, not in the whole company. So we saw that we had the tendency to be dependent on knowing who to have to ask. I have a certain problem, I need to ask that guy. That didn't really work anymore. So we decided to do a pre-study together with a partner, basically seeing that what pain points do we have that PLM could potentially help us address. So one such being lack of change management, as Dominic mentioned here. It wasn't that we didn't do any change management at all, it was more that it was done in a very unstructured way, and it wasn't documented in a uniform and consistent way. Then maybe more specifically to us, and here I should say we create high voltage power cables, and we do it in turnkey solution projects. And that leads to some specific challenges that might not be applicable for everyone. So one is then the whole mindset as such. We tend to think in projects. We sell projects, we don't sell products. And we also have very long projects, so being let's say from the early tender stage to the point where the cable is installed, that takes many years, sometimes up to 10, and then we tend to lose traceability over time, such as a question such as what did we actually sell to the customer in the tender phase? That should be extremely easy to answer, but it wasn't. Another aspect of that is again connected to the mindset. And here is the biggest problem we saw, and I have many examples, and that is the inability to find data. A growing company meant growing data volumes, and one reason for this was, you can say, a lack of product categorization or classification. Since we thought in projects, the data was categorized in per project, so to say. Another issue was lack of reuse, very inefficient from the same mindset, that, okay, we have project, this is my project, I want my parts, I want control of them. Then it didn't matter that in project B they had exactly the same part. Then we created our own parts in project A, and that led to scrap and whatnot. And the last part of inability to find data is related to documents. So we did actually have a document management system, but the focus was more on the customer-facing documents. So internal product documents, which we had a huge amount of, were stored in folder structures on a networks sharing. We had to have Excel files to keep track of them. I think some of you recognize that one. Yeah.
Thank you. So moving on to Daniel number 2.
Yeah.
Or Sale, sorry. But you also work in a completely different industry, and you have, even bigger organization compared to NKT and CorPower, a truly global company. How have you addressed sort of organizational change management? And I think that was one of the questions also, routed to in the Vestas presentation. And, how do you make sure that the employees are on board on, these strategic initiatives?
Yeah, it has been a really rough journey, I would say. I don't know, Lars, are you here? Yeah, we have tried in many, many years, I would say. But thanks to an ERP change, the staff actually approved and understand we need to implement change management in Winchell. So that was the approving from the staff or the board. To get the employee and the key users in Winchell, was, of course, to involve them a lot in the specification, in the testing, validation, and then in a test environment, of course. Then after that outcome, we were sitting with Michael Wallin, I think you also hear from PDS, yeah. And we worked with the specification, I would say, more or less in 1 year before we went live with change management and have good guidelines ready before starting. The process is there, the readiness that you see from the users, are they there? And have a continuously support is the main key. Otherwise, you will not have happy faces in the business. So I would say that is the key word. From Electrolux journey, professional.
Good. Thank you. Back to Daniel, keen on sort of hearing your perspectives on, were there any, or can you share any sort of specific examples where, where this initiative or this project, improved collaboration? Because I know that was an issue for you before. I mean, how have you looked into that, and then what have you seen?
So I would say we're still in a continuous journey there, but we do see improvements in certain areas. So the first one I want to highlight is, I mentioned the part reuse or the non-existence of it before. So we do have some ways to go, but we have already started to see improvements here. And I think it's partly thanks to, I think you told me to not get technical, but the part classification module, so marketing that a bit. So here we also have some ways to go in terms of optimizing the tree and actually getting users to classify properly. I think that ties into one of the workshops tomorrow.
Yeah.
But also, if we disregard the technical part of it, the mindset. I mentioned the project-centric mindset, how that has really changed over the years I've been part of this. That yes, we do have projects, that's what we sell, but yes, we also have products and parts within those projects, and sometimes they are reusable. So that's the first part. The second part is, I mentioned the inability to find data, and here we will focus specifically on documents as an example. Just as we are project-centric, we are extremely document-centric, whatever that means, but I can say in our biggest projects we can have 10,000 plus documents, not all being product-related, but still. So before we had the technical documents on a network share, now we have them in Windchill, we have attributes, we have relations to or cables, accessories, machines, materials, and whatnot. And of course that offers whole other possibilities to find them compared to before. Then we also have 3 integrations. I'm not going to go into all of those, what they mean, but one worth mentioning then specifically is that we do have a separate document management system. We have a very niched document management due to high requirements from our customers, one customer being Vestas, that presented earlier. And then we naturally have an integration where we send product-related documents from Windchill to that system. And the whole benefit is, of course, to reduce manual handovers, ensure that files are not temporarily stored on a network share in between and get reapproved and all that. And then the last area I want to focus on ties more into really the ways of working in general. And here, of course, Windchill as a system offers certain features like attribute workflow validations and whatnot. But what I see is what has had the biggest effect is that this has led to a cross-functional governance. So we have cross-functional groups. We have 4 representatives there, both in the PLM and CAD domains, meeting on a recurring basis, discussing new ideas, how to work, and so on. And of course, we have improvements in this area, but we see a massive difference today compared to earlier. And one example is that this even led to us recruiting a CAD super user, where one of the purposes was to align on the CAD methodology and how we work there, and he sits there. Hello, Thomas.
I'm surprised you're not in the other room as a CAD lover, but happy to have you here.
I told him to sit here.
Good. Yeah. Freedom of choice, right?
Yeah.
Good. So general structure and then quality data. That's what I hear. Definitely. Good. Thanks. Back to Dominic. again, you're a young company, you're just getting started. I mean, and sometimes, or I've often heard in history, that, a lot of companies, they think we're not there yet, we need to, mature much more, etc. But you jumped the gun fairly early on. I mean, how did you motivate to, go on this journey basically so early on? Because again, finance is probably under pressure and whatnot. But again, would you share a little bit on how you motivated the business case for this?
Sure. Again, it's a bit CAD related. Sorry if I'm being a bit of a traitor here, but
feel free.
But within like the management in the company, they're very open to hear what pain that the design teams have, because they see timelines slipping and things like that. So in terms of actual metrics to compare, it's quite hard because we don't have a lot of old products to compare against, and we've also just started with the PTC products. But in terms of the, let's say, the release process, that's quite an easy one to just say that this is how long a release takes us, because we need to take all these additional manual steps. So that's quite easy to quantify. We can just how long does each one of these take on average? How many times do we do it over a year, and then come up with an ROI on that. In terms of change management, again, what I mentioned a little bit at the start, it's harder to quantify, but we believe that we will have a lot less errors. I expect a lot less changes as well, but also CorPower, we have one product. So when we're making the new version of the product soon, so once we get to the end of that life cycle, then we can compare. But what I think is the most important thing is that designers will not dread opening the top level assembly. It's like you just try to avoid it at all costs. We've made artificial product structures just so you would have an assembly which is just about manageable. So we've actually had one or two instances of major issues that we could have avoided if we just didn't have the friction of going in and opening the top or top level model. So it was actually quite an easy thing to talk the top level management into this upgrade, which is good.
Good. Then you won't have the problem that many other companies face, in a few years, to clean up the data because it's a mess, right? Yes. So, kudos. Looking at you again, Salle, were there any sort of unexpected benefits or positive outcomes from, this journey you've been on it for quite some time, of course. So I guess it's hard to, select a few, but, any sort of positive surprises that are worth mentioning?
I would say many positives outcomes, but I will focus on one topic in change management then. So change management provides us a huge quality improvement, I would say, of what we are releasing in production today, because we have an interface between Windshield and our ERP through the change management. The quality check, I would say, is fabulous of helping the daily work inside Windshield, because you categorize and put in the rules what is acceptable and what's needed to be on the part level before you can release anything, or what is downstream in your parent-child relation, that some of the childs that you introduce in our parent is not in the wrong state and vice versa, and filling all the criteria that is the demand. Because if I look today, now we actually have used it almost 1 year, the interface and the change management implementation. I will say we have decreased the change notices with 40% almost, that you do the right thing from the beginning. I hope it's that's why. So I would say that is one of the latest positive outcomes. I would say.
Good one.
Good.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Well, so some of the, I know you've been on quite of a, let's call it implementation journey, quite a bumpy ride, a lot of ups and downs. And I remember when we first came in contact, all the complaints you were facing. But, what's your experience on that? And, the lessons learned, that might be helpful for other organizations when they look into this. I know Electrolux has a lot of perspectives on this, but, what are the lessons learned really from your side?
So in terms of, if I start with the challenges, I could basically go on the whole day, but
We don't
think
have
anyone
time.
wants that. So I will focus on one, and what I think was the main one. And this really ties into the organizational change management, and we should have met you before we started the journey, so you could tell us how to do it.
It's not so easy, I would say.
No, but basically, of course, everyone committed to starting this journey at one point, but then throughout the whole project, we saw the issue that we had participation from. It was driven by IT and a few of the key departments, but while as other key departments, they either didn't show up at all or to way too small extent. And that led to issues such as that some of their key requirements were missed, some features were not properly tested from all angles. They were not really in the loop, so they didn't know what was happening. They didn't get, call it free training. If you have users during the journey, you get that. Then we decided to go live anyway, because those departments that had spent time, we didn't want to prolong it. I mean, they had spent the time. So we did it, and then for, I would say, more than a year, we had escalations and frustrations from those that didn't participate, of course, due to those technical issues we faced, due to the missed requirements, but also because they didn't really have a strong, key user or power user that could tell them why should they use Windshield, how, what's in it for them. So they basically saw a system that was, it had technical issues and it didn't provide any value compared to the previous one. That's how they saw it. And the first lesson learned, and the most obvious one, is that you need continuous participation from all stakeholders throughout the whole project. And if you don't get it, escalate to their management sooner rather than later. The second, and maybe not so obvious, that's one I underestimated during the project. And my manager told me every now and then, I was like, and that's to keep on reminding the stakeholders why they need this. Because different stakeholders have different benefits, and managers and people come and go over time. So continuously remind them of why they're doing this. And then the last lesson learned, and this is basically the only one that doesn't directly tie into the people aspect, but still it boils down to the time you spend. And that is related to data migration. I suspect that many of you that will embark on these journeys, you have some kind of legacy data. And I'm not talking about the technical data migration now as in moving in files, but more the cleansing, the preparation work to actually spend time on setting the attributes, the relations. It takes a lot of time, yes. But if you don't do that, if you do that, you can from day one when you launch Windshield, you can showcase, for instance, which classification explorer or whatnot. See how good this is and motivate users to continue to do it, use it and do it right. If you don't do it, you dump the data in, which is very tempting. Then you have a big black hole, and the ability to find data is not much better than before.
Good. Interesting reflection when we talked yesterday was the fact that you in the early days, there was a lot of complaints. Now it's more like when everyone is, aligned with the why, and, they've seen the improvements, that you have a difficulty, accommodating all the requests and improvements and changes they want to do. So I think that's a positive result, at least.
We're in a more pleasant situation. I don't have less work to do. I have more work to do, but it's more pleasant work. People are looking forward, and when do we do this and this? There we have one guy who feels he looks very guilty. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. So, and now we have talked about, history and where you were, but if you would share sort of your next step on the journey you're on, what do you see and what's sort of the priorities that you will focus on, if we start with you, Daniel?
So the first one worth mentioning is that I mentioned that we have 3 integrations in place for document. And it might sound weird. Why do we start there? But that's because we are so document-centric, and that's what people know. The next one is to get the part system landscape in place as well. So here we have a couple of initiatives in various stages. One is an integration to a cable. You can call it a cable configurator. And there we're technically ready, but it's about 2 weeks away to the go live. Then we have a bigger ERP integration where we have done a pre-study, and we hope to have something by the end of this year, and then some other integration. The second is the change management, and here we don't utilize it so much as we could. We have one site heavily using it, but we have other departments in our main site, I would say, that are not using it yet. But the eyes have started to open, and we have started a small focus group to look into the SIS and 2B processes, and we have started to involve PDS recently. And the next one is more about general onboarding. That's something we have worked on a lot during the last year, and will continue to work on onboard more seldom users to ensure that we don't have to have more frequent users emailing PDFs, the classic one. And then the final step, and that kind of ties things together, and that is, I mentioned the project traceability, that we lose that. For that to happen, we need to have all the BOM structured and all the proper change management in the system. And once we have that, we can, by basically combining BOMs, maybe using EBOM to MBOM transformation, reach that point as well. But that, I think, will take a bit more time.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. You probably won't have less to do then, moving forward.
No, I don't. I don't foresee that, sadly.
Good. Dominic?
And so for us, it's to start using it for everything. Currently, we're in a transition period, which is good. As I said, we only have one machine, so we have our old machine and the former software, and we have the new machine in Creo and Windchill. So it's quite a clean break for us. So I'm sure there'll be many other things that we need to do once we really start to use it. We also have a phase 2 plan, so that's integrating our mechanical CAD with ECAD, and also with our monitor ERP system. In addition to that, not 100% confirmed yet, but we expect all product data to go to be attached in Windchill as well. Currently, it's on SharePoint and desktops and inboxes and things like that, so it needs to go into the one place.
That's good. We need a good baseline.
Yeah.
Good. And Electrolux, I mean, you're undergoing some really interesting evolution yourself. I mean, you're acquiring companies right, left, center. You're rapidly growing. So, I mean, how do you settle down on the priorities, and what's the next step?
Yeah, the priorities, of course, we are having 13 manufacturing sites around the world, and of course, the main prioritize is, of course, to roll out the PLM everywhere. We have it in 5 sites today, and the biggest site is this year, and that's Valnicello in Italy. And I think when they are there, it will be wrapping up a lot. And then, of course, is the change management implementation in other sites, more than just in Yangbin in Thailand. And then also certification on product level and article level. That's the main goal this year.
Are you relocating to Italy then?
No.
No. Good. Conscious of time before I start to get I get assigned two. That's good. So I'll try to make it in 1.5, and then leave 30 seconds. Good. So wrapping it up really, in 30 seconds for the panelists, and thanks for sharing. Sort of what if you would leave the audience with one last main message in again, conscious of time, 20-30 seconds, not more.
Yeah, I promised you a one-liner, and that is never stop promoting PLM. As I said before, continuous reminders on the whys to justify that they continue to put time and resources and money into it.
Thanks. Dominic?
So keep an open mind. If we are converging many processes, departments, all into the one system. You can't work exactly the way that you were working before. It's just part of the deal. Yeah.
Good.
This will probably take more than 30 seconds, but I borrowed this word. Do we have any Star Wars fans here? everywhere, I hope.
Everywhere.
So if I borrow you, Aleksander, if you take my hand here.
This was not a part of the...
Yeah, I know. And you repeat after me the same. This is the way.
This is the way.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
you, guys. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed that. I mean, try to grab these guys, during lunch or in the afternoon in the bar, probably.
Not for me. I will probably. Sorry, but I will need to.
Yeah, sure.
Move home to my wife.
Already yesterday, when we were supposed to meet up here, he was having a wine glass, on stage, and I told him, specifically, you cannot have that tomorrow.
No, then I will probably not have an employee anymore in the electrical professional either. So.
Good. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing. I would like to welcome the next speaker up on stage. It's Xylem, represented by Mikael Gustafsson. Please, welcome up on stage.